But sometimes, improving efficiency alone is not enough. To survive, some industries have had to abandon everything they do and radically reinvent themselves. This is a scrapyard in Decatur, Alabama. 140,000 tons of rusting metal baking in the summer sun. Waylon Daniels' job is to keep it all organized.
We have different types, like this right here is shred. It's basically just shredded up automobiles. And we have plate and structural steel. It's like from bridges, ships, barges, buildings, rail cars that are out of service, they cut them up.
This place might seem like a wasteland, but what you're actually looking at is a rebirth of America's most iconic industry, steel. For more than a century, we were the greatest steel-making nation on Earth. Then, we grew stagnant. Foreign competitors began producing steel that was better and cheaper. And in the 1980s, America's steel industry simply collapsed, costing over 300,000 jobs. But looking among the ruins, one tiny company saw an opportunity and seized it. The company is called Nucor. As America's steel giants fell, it pursued a maverick strategy, buying up scrap metal yards like this all across the country and focusing its entire business on recycling. So these mountains of junk are actually raw materials, and they're so important that this scrapyard was built right here to feed that steel mill. It was an enormous risk. Steel was traditionally made from iron ore, and scrap was a fringe ingredient. It was cheap and plentiful, but nobody knew how to make it into profitable steel. Solving that problem was Nucor's big breakthrough. The secret, they discovered, lay in the most basic part of the process: heat.
Right now you're looking at the furnace, electric arc furnace.
Okay, so the scrap metal gets put over here and then you guys melt it down.
Exactly.
Dwayne Thomas supervises the melt team here. His job is to make sure that each load of scrap is heated to a precise set of specifications, which means he's constantly on the move between a tiny air-conditioned control room and the 3,000-degree furnace.
Whoa, this place is hot. Oh, yes, it is.
You ever get used to the heat?
Well, some people do. I haven't yet. I just got used to being hot and sweaty all the time.
This electric furnace is key to Nucor's innovative strategy. In a traditional steel mill, furnaces are powered by burning fuel and can take days to reach the right temperature. This furnace, which is heated by electrodes, can power up or down in a matter of hours, providing flexibility never before seen in this industry.
Is that the electrode? That is the electrode.
So basically there's a big electric current running through that thing.
Right, but all around the electrode, it's insulated, so the electricity is directed into the steel.
This furnace makes Nucor highly competitive. Unlike a traditional mill, they can make steel to order at a moment's notice, which means that the scrap that Dwayne's melting now won't sit idle for long. Before the day is over, it will be poured, rolled, cooled, and stacked for delivery to the customer. So what was rusting junk in the morning is ready to be transformed into a bus, tank, or refrigerator by evening. The process has been a game changer for the entire steel industry. It's made Nucor the most profitable steelmaker in the country and one of the largest recycling businesses in the world. Nationwide, they recycle 1 ton of scrap every 2 seconds. They're a triumph of American innovation. And they're not the only ones out there. This is Chandler, Arizona, home to what is perhaps the most innovative manufacturing site on Earth. An Intel microchip factory. If you own a computer, chances are good that its brain was built in here.
1 foot in, all the way through.
It's extraordinarily difficult to get into this place because Intel is obsessed with cleanliness.
Back a little bit further. There you go.
I have to put on what they call a bunny suit to keep dust away from the microchips. It means I'm spending more than an hour just preparing to enter the factory. But nothing can really prepare me for what I find inside. It's like I've stepped through a time warp into some sci-fi future. There are little robots running all over the ceiling, vents on the floor filtering air to keep the place thousands of times cleaner than a hospital operating room. And there are machines everywhere, manipulating chips that are layered with circuitry that's infinitesimally small.
When I first started, I could look through a microscope and actually see the printed features.
And you can't even
You can't even do that. Not on a regular one, no.
Tammy Westall is one of the top engineers here, and even she struggles to simply describe the size of Intel's chips.
A human hair is 80 microns. 1 micron has 1,000 nanometers in it. We're printing here 32 nanometer technology. So imagine that. You take a micron, right, which your hair is 80 of them, and you even slice that down even further. It blows my mind.
But even though most of us don't understand the details, as Intel has made its chips ever smaller, they've changed our world. In the early 1950s, before microchips, computers were the size of a house. They were powered by circuit boards as big as your hand, and they could only perform basic arithmetic. Then came Intel. Over the last 4 decades, they've built chips that are ever smaller and ever more powerful, increasing the strength of our computers by a factor of 1 million. And they built something else as well. A brand. Think about it. You and I don't buy microchips. We buy computers that hold them. Yet we all know the Intel name. It's one of the most valuable brands on Earth. But Intel can't afford to rest on its laurels. The world is filled with technology companies that are eating into its market share. To stay on top, Intel must continue to innovate. And this is where they're trying to do it. 1,000 miles from their Arizona clean room in an office park in Hillsboro, Oregon. Here, Intel has gathered a unique team of researchers. These people aren't just engineers. Some, like Brian David Johnson, have much more exotic job titles. So Brian, you're a futurist, right?
Mm-hmm.
What the heck is that?
So it's my job at Intel to look out about 10 to 15 years into the future and get an understanding of what people will want to do with computers and computational devices. Now that kind of sounds a little bit like science fiction, but it's actually pretty practical because at Intel, right, we're an engineering company, we're a manufacturing company. And so it takes about 10 years to design, develop, and deploy the microchip. And so it's incredibly important for us to have an understanding today of what people will want to do 10 years from now.
Brian is part of a team that includes ethnographers and anthropologists. They travel the globe studying behavior, looking at how we shop, watch TV, and surf the internet, trying to figure out how to make microchips for things that don't even exist yet.
If people are watching internet video, if people are watching broadcast video, if people are watching all of these things, as Tony was saying, how do you combine all of those together?
This isn't my idea of what a manufacturing company looks like, but that's the whole point. To keep its brand strong, Intel has had to step back from its hyper-clean plants and microscopic production techniques, back into this world, where the things that you and I do every day, whole clues to help them keep pace with the market. It sounds daunting, but this is how manufacturing evolves. Companies try things. Some fail, but many succeed. And all across America, I found companies thriving in surprising ways. Sometimes in the most unexpected places. This is Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, home to Allentown, Bethlehem, and Nazareth. Once a cradle of industry, the valley is now at the heart of America's Rust Belt. A bleak landscape of abandoned factories, the remains of steel mills that couldn't compete, garment makers that moved overseas. Yet hidden amidst all the decay is one company that's blossomed. This is Martin Guitars. If you're a musician, it's as powerful a brand as Intel. Name an artist, they've probably played a Martin. From Hank Williams to Elvis, Bob Dylan, to Kurt Cobain. But while companies like Intel have built their brand by looking into the future, Martin has done it by staying true to its roots. No one knows this better than Willard Silvius. He's been with the company for 46 years and performs its most delicate task, neck fitting.
You're setting the playability of the instrument right there.
Uh-huh. Have you ever thought about working at a different company?
No,
Why is that?
Martin's is the best.
It's the best.
Martin's is the best.
What makes it the best? You, right?
No, it's just that it's tradition.
Looking around, you'd never guess this company has struggled. But it has. 30 years ago, Martin almost went bankrupt trying to stay competitive by expanding and outsourcing. A disaster that still drives its relentless focus on tradition today.
There's a famous saying in Martin, which is, stick to your knitting. That's all we do. We just stick to one thing we're good at. We know we're good at making acoustic guitars. That's one thing we know, what we think we're the best in the world. We think we're the best that's ever been at making acoustic guitars. So why would you do anything else?
Fred Green is Martin's factory manager. He runs this place like a mother hen, treasuring the craftspeople that make the brand special.
Morning, Bert.
Hi, how are you?
How are you today?
Okay, how about you?
Hello, hi. Nice to meet you.
Every morning, I come in and grab a cup of coffee and just start wandering the floor and saying hi to everybody. How you doing? Some people say hi, some people don't. They get really focused on what they're doing.
So they're really into their job?
Oh my God.
Perfectionists?
OCD to the max around here. I mean, everybody is just, if it's just not perfect and just right, they just can't let it go.
It seems like you could maybe automate a lot of this stuff, right? I mean, if you can figure out the specifications for the best guitar, couldn't you just replicate that using machines?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I play other people's guitars, you know, and you know it's a machine-made guitar. The moment you pick it up and the moment you start to play it, you can get a cold feeling from guitars that feel too machined.
Right.
And guitars where somebody's sitting there and they're shaping that brace, and it's just a little bit different than the last one. You know, they're in the same spec, let's say, but it's just a little bit different.
Fred may seem old-fashioned, but he's developed a clever business strategy. He knows that Martin can't rely solely on tradition. New instrument makers using new technologies are springing up all over the globe. So Fred's carefully refining Martin's factory, adding machines that increase productivity without sacrificing quality.
The jobs that were crucial to the way our guitars sound and the way they feel, we didn't want to change those things.
Okay. So you've tried to automate the non-value-added parts, the one that just requires kind of brute machinery.
Right.
But the ones where you actually require a high level of human skill. You try to maximize your production by applying those to the areas where it's most needed.
Exactly.
What happens if someone's working at a job that ends up getting automated or replaced? What happens to the worker?
We just find another job for them in the factory.
Or you keep them in-house?
Yeah, we never let anybody go. When we do hire people, I always tell them our intention is to hire you for life.
Really?
And when you get here, you're not going to leave. The Hotel California, you check in, but you don't check out.
Fred has increased Martin's productivity by 40% without dismissing a single worker. It's an inspiring story. And this place embodies the most basic thing I've learned about American manufacturing. It's thriving. We make a tremendous amount of stuff. And I'm not just talking about acoustic guitars or automobiles or microchips. We're making airplanes, farm equipment, pharmaceuticals, and more. Despite whatever you may have heard, America is actually the #1 manufacturing nation on Earth. Some of our most traditional industries are riding a remarkable wave of innovation, and new ones are springing up all the time, spurred by something that's changing everything about what we make. But to get a good look at it, you need to leave the floors of our factories and head to a remote place like this.